If you've ever felt abandoned by the very people who should have protected you, then you'll understand every word I'm about to say. Before I continue the story, kindly like this story, subscribe and tell us where you're listening from. I grew up in a house where hope was a stranger. My parents were never the type to save for tomorrow. They lived chasing a fantasy, scratching lottery tickets and throwing coins at gambling tables, as if one day luck would transform our lives. But luck never came. And when it came to my education, to my future, I was invisible. I remember nights sitting in a dark room, listening to my mother and father argue about numbers, bets, and wins that never happened. Meanwhile, I had an exam the next morning and no money for the required fees. I begged, I pleaded, I cried, but they never cared enough to put even a little aside for me. Instead, they'd tell me to be patient, our big win is coming. But their big win never paid my school fees. Their big win never bought me a textbook. Their big win never put food in my stomach. So I had to fight. I had to beg teachers to give me more time. I had to humble myself before neighbors, asking for help just so I could stay in school. Every time I stood in front of someone's door, asking for money to continue my education, my heart would shatter. Because I knew, my parents had money. They just chose the lottery over me. And the community? They watched. They whispered. They pitied me. Some even laughed behind my back. That boy, his parents don't care about him, they'd say. Do you know how it feels when your whole life becomes gossip fuel? When even strangers think your own blood doesn't value you. It burns. It scars you. But the worst part wasn't even the neglect, it was the emptiness in their eyes whenever I told them my dreams. I told my father I wanted to become someone great, to build a future with my own hands. He just shrugged and told me not to waste my time on things that don't bring fast money. My mother? She'd just tell me to pray that the lottery ticket wins. I can't explain to you how crushing it is when the people who brought you into this world are the same ones clipping your wings. I should have been encouraged. I should have been supported. Instead, I was humiliated, made to feel like my ambitions were foolish. But here's the thing. Suffering has a strange way of carving steel out of your soul. The more I was ignored, the more determined I became. Every tear I shed, every night I went to bed hungry, every time I was mocked by my own parents, it all built a fire inside me. Still, as a child, I carried a fragile heart. I kept hoping one day they would wake up and see me. One day, they'd stop gambling and actually invest in me. But that day never came. I remember one morning clearly. I was sitting outside on the porch with my school uniform torn at the edges. My classmates had brand new books, and I was holding together my old ones with tape. My father walked past me, counting the little money he had. My heart leapt. Maybe this time he'll give me something for school, I thought. But do you know where he went? Straight to the betting center. I sat there, frozen. And that was the day something inside me cracked. From that day, I promised myself, I would never forget. I would never let this pain fade away. Because one day, I was going to use it. I was going to build myself into someone they couldn't ignore. Someone the whole community would look at differently. But I didn't know then that the same parents who neglected me would later demand I give up everything I worked for, not for me, but for my little brother. I didn't know they'd call me wicked in front of the same community that once pitied me. I didn't know they'd push me into the darkest, coldest decision of my life. That part of the story comes later. But for now, just understand this, I was the forgotten son. The boy left to fend for himself while his parents gambled away every chance he had. And as I look back now, telling you this, I realize, that pain was my greatest weapon. It built the man who would one day rise. It built the man who would take his revenge, not with blood, but with success. Stay with me, because in the next part, I'll tell you how everything I fought to save was almost stolen from me again, this time, by the very people who should have loved me the most. If you thought being neglected was the worst part of my story, wait until you hear how my own parents turned me into the villain in front of the entire community. After years of scraping and crawling through life, I finally managed to breathe. I had left behind the endless begging for school fees, the shame of being mocked by neighbors, and the humiliation of watching my parents throw money into gambling pits. By the time I finished my education, I had saved something small. It wasn't much, but to me, it was freedom. Every coin I earned with sweat. I worked odd jobs, stayed up nights planning, and every time I wanted to spend recklessly, I reminded myself of those days when I had nothing. That money was my lifeline. My chance to start something of my own. My chance to finally build a business and create a future that wasn't dependent on anyone's mercy. But just when I thought life was giving me a chance to rise, my parents struck again. It started with a casual conversation. My father walked into my room one evening, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Son," he said, "your little brother is finishing school soon. It's time for him to move higher. We need to pay for his college, and later, we'll set him up with a business." At first, I didn't understand. I nodded, thinking he was telling me his plans. Then the hammer fell. "We've decided," he said, "that you will take care of it. Use your savings to pay his fees and prepare something for his future. You're his elder brother, it's your responsibility." I froze. My chest tightened. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These were the same people who never gave a single sadie for my education. The same people who left me to beg and crawl my way through life. And now? Now they wanted me to give up everything I had worked for, everything I had saved, to push my brother forward, as if I didn't exist. I tried to reason with them. I told them I had plans. I told them this was my only chance to start a business, to secure my future. But they didn't hear me. They didn't care. My words were like whispers in a storm. My mother cut me off with a voice sharp as a knife. "Stop being selfish. Your brother's future is more important than your little dreams. We did everything for you, now it's your turn to do something for him." Did everything for me? I almost laughed. What exactly did they do for me? Did they pay my tuition? Did they sacrifice anything for my education? Did they once put my dreams before their gambling tickets? No. They hadn't. But now, in their twisted minds, they believed I owed them. I thought it would end there, just a family disagreement. But I was wrong. The next weekend, they dragged me into the open. In the center of the community, my father raised his voice and told everyone how I had refused to help my younger brother. He painted me as wicked, ungrateful, arrogant. My mother added her tears, sobbing about how they had suffered to raise me, only for me to abandon the family when they needed me most. The crowd turned. Faces that once pitied me now glared at me with disgust. I heard the whispers, "How can he do that to his own brother? Doesn't he know family comes first?" My name was dragged in the dirt. I became the villain in a story I didn't write. Nobody cared about my struggles, about the nights I cried myself to sleep, about the humiliation I endured just to get through school. All they saw was a young man refusing to sacrifice himself once again. That day broke something in me. I felt anger boiling in my veins, not just at my parents, but at the entire community that stood there judging me without ever knowing the truth. But more than anger, I felt something colder, resolve. That was the day I killed the soft heart I once carried. I realized I couldn't win with them. No amount of explaining, no amount of truth would change their minds. To them, I was wicked. To them, I was ungrateful. Fine. Let them believe it. But I made a vow. If they wanted me to be the villain, I would play the part, but on my own terms. I would no longer live for their approval. I would no longer sacrifice my dreams to make them comfortable. Instead, I would use my savings to invest in myself. I would build a business that no one could ignore. And when the time came, when the tables turned, I would make sure they remembered every tear they caused me, every humiliation they threw at me. The community had seen me as a beggar. Now, they would see me as a conqueror. And my parents? They would regret the day they ever called me wicked. But success doesn't come easy. What followed next was the hardest battle of my life, risking everything I had, standing alone against the odds, and betting not on luck like my parents, but on myself. They called me wicked, but what they didn't know was that their words gave me the courage to do something I had never done before, choose myself. After that public humiliation, I stopped caring about their opinions. My heart had been torn, stomped on, and left bleeding in front of an audience. But from that pain came clarity. I saw my life for what it truly was, a battlefield. And if I wanted to survive, I had to stop fighting for their approval and start fighting for my future. That night, I sat alone with my savings spread out before me. It wasn't much compared to the wealth I dreamed of, but it was enough to take a risk. My parents wanted me to hand it over to my brother, but I thought of the long years I had struggled, the endless humiliation, the sacrifices I had already made. I couldn't let it all go to waste. So I made the coldest decision of my life. I killed the part of me that felt guilty, the part that still wanted to please them. I buried it that night. Instead, I took a step that terrified me. I invested in myself. I had been studying the local market quietly for months. I had seen the gaps others ignored. People thought I was foolish, wasting my time reading business journals, watching traders, asking endless questions. But I was building something in silence. I knew where demand was growing. I knew what product could thrive. All I needed was the courage to act. With shaking hands, I poured my savings into a small business venture. No one believed in me. My parents mocked me, saying, "This business will collapse. You should have done the right thing and helped your brother." The community laughed, whispering that I was doomed to fail. But failure was not an option. I worked day and night. I didn't sleep more than 3 hours a night. I handled everything myself, purchasing goods, meeting customers, balancing accounts. Every time doubt crept into my mind, I remembered the sneers, the laughter, the word wicked ringing in my ears. That word became my fuel. The beginning was brutal. There were days I almost lost everything. Days I wondered if I had made a mistake. But slowly, very slowly, the business started to breathe. A profit here, a returning customer there, a contract I never thought I'd get. I felt something I had never felt before, control. For the first time in my life, my future wasn't in someone else's hands. It wasn't in the hands of my parents or the community. It was in mine. And as the business grew, so did my hunger. I reinvested every profit, expanded my operations, and studied harder than ever. While others slept, I was planning. While my parents wasted nights chasing lottery dreams, I was chasing real results. The community that once mocked me began to notice. Whispers changed from "he'll fail" to "maybe he's onto something." But I didn't care about whispers anymore. I was building an empire from the ashes of their ridicule. Every sale, every deal, every brick of my business was an act of revenge. Not the kind of revenge that uses knives or guns, but a sharper one. The kind that stabs with success, the kind that silences doubters without a word. And yet, as I was rising, my parents never stopped trying to control me. They still demanded that I give to my brother, still accused me of being heartless. But this time, I didn't even argue. I let their words bounce off me like stones against steel. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew that one day, the roles would reverse. One day, they would come to me, not with demands, but with desperate pleas. And when that day came, I would remind them of everything. The wicked son they humiliated in public was becoming a man of power. And soon, they would realize the price of their betrayal. In the next chapter, I'll tell you how my small business turned into something much greater, how the same community that mocked me started bowing their heads in respect, and how the ones who once called me wicked came crawling back, begging for mercy. They thought I would crawl forever. They thought my story would end with failure. But little did they know, the same wicked son they mocked was rising into a man they could never ignore. My business started small, so small that most people didn't even notice it existed. But what they didn't know was that I was planting a seed, and that seed was destined to grow into a tree with roots so deep no storm could uproot it. Every profit I made, I poured back into the business. I lived frugally, ate little, and slept less. My nights were filled with planning and my mornings with execution. While others were waiting for luck, I was creating mine with my bare hands. And slowly, the shift began. My customer base grew. My products reached places I never thought possible. My name started to circulate in business circles. Opportunities came knocking, and I seized every one of them with both hands. The same community that once whispered insults now began whispering something different: respect. I would walk through the marketplace, and people who once mocked me now stretched out their hands, greeting me with smiles. Some even tried to erase their past words, pretending they had always believed in me. But I remembered. Oh, I remembered every laugh, every whisper, every cruel word. But I didn't waste my time correcting them. No, I let my success speak for me. Soon, my business grew into something larger than I ever imagined. I expanded into multiple ventures. My network spread beyond the community, beyond the city. Contracts flowed in. Partnerships blossomed. And with each new milestone, my influence grew. It wasn't long before I became a man of power. My wealth spoke. My reputation commanded attention. People who had once dismissed me now looked at me with awe and envy. The community meetings that once dragged my name through the mud. Now, I was the one they begged to attend, the one they looked to for leadership, the one whose opinion mattered. And then came the sweetest moment of all, when my parents finally realized what I had become. They had spent years waiting for their lottery miracle, but luck had never arrived. Their pockets grew emptier, their health weaker, their dreams collapsing like sandcastles against the tide. My younger brother, the one they had wanted me to sacrifice my future for, struggled too. Without guidance, without the discipline of hardship, he had wasted opportunities, drifting with no direction. And so, when their world crumbled, they came to me. I remember the day vividly. My father, the same man who had once called me wicked before the whole community, came into my office. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes hollow. My mother followed, quieter than I had ever seen her. And my brother trailed behind, unable to meet my gaze. They asked for help. The silence in that room was heavy. For years, they had branded me ungrateful. For years, they had stripped me of dignity in front of others. And now, they sat in front of me, helpless, desperate, powerless. Part of me wanted to laugh. Part of me wanted to spit back every insult they had ever thrown at me. But instead, I leaned back in my chair, studying them. I didn't give them an answer right away. No, I let them squirm, let them feel the weight of their actions. Because in that moment, they finally understood the truth. The son they called wicked was the only one who could save them. And the community? Oh, they watched closely. Word spread fast. The same people who had once judged me now whispered with anticipation, wondering what I would do. Would I forgive them? Would I take revenge? I had the power. The choice was mine. But the reckoning wasn't yet complete. In the next chapter, I'll tell you exactly what I did when they begged for my help, how I delivered the final piece of my revenge, and why they would never dare call me wicked again. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. The day my parents, the same people who once called me wicked, fell to their knees before me. They sat in front of me, fragile and defeated. My father, once loud and commanding, could barely look me in the eye. My mother, who had stood in front of the community to brand me ungrateful, now clutched her hands together like a beggar. And my younger brother, the golden child they wanted to sacrifice me for, looked at the floor, ashamed. I could feel the weight of the room pressing down on them. For years, they had told me I was nothing. For years, they had mocked my dreams, gambled away their chances, and painted me as the villain. And now, here they were, asking the villain for salvation. I leaned forward slowly, my voice calm but cold. Do you remember the day you called me wicked? My father shifted uncomfortably. My mother's eyes watered. My brothers' lips trembled. None of them answered. Do you remember, I continued, when I begged for tuition, when I begged for help, and you chose to spend the money on lottery tickets instead? Do you remember when I told you my dreams, and you laughed? The silence was louder than any answer they could have given. I could have shouted. I could have unleashed years of bottled-up rage. But instead, I did something worse, I stayed calm. Calmness cut deeper than anger. Calmness reminded them that I no longer needed their approval. Finally, my mother whispered, "We made mistakes. Please, forgive us. Forgive." That word echoed in my mind. For a moment, I thought of the little boy I once was, the boy who cried himself to sleep because his parents chose gambling over him, the boy who was humiliated in front of neighbors. Did that boy deserve forgiveness? No. He deserved justice. And this was justice. I stood up, walked around the desk, and looked them in the eye one by one. "I will not let you starve," I said finally. "But make no mistake. This is not because you deserve it. This is because I refuse to be like you. I will give you just enough to survive. Nothing more. No luxuries, no control over me, no second chance to call me wicked." Their faces sank. Relief mixed with shame. They had expected me to either forgive them fully or destroy them completely. Instead, I chose a colder path, the path of control. They would live, but they would never forget who held their survival in his hands. As for my brother, I turned to him and spoke clearly. "You were meant to be the chosen one, but you wasted it. Don't expect me to hand you what I built. If you want a future, earn it the way I did, through pain, through sacrifice, through fire. Don't ever expect me to carry you." He lowered his head, unable to argue. And then came the final strike, the part they never saw coming. I called the community together, the same community that once watched me be shamed. I stood before them, with my parents and brother standing silently behind me. And I told my story, every detail of neglect, every sacrifice, every humiliation. I didn't do it with anger. I told it with precision, with proof, with the calmness of a man who had nothing left to prove. The community gasped. Their faces turned from judgment to shame. And in that moment, my revenge was complete. Not because I destroyed my parents, but because I exposed them. I turned the spotlight back where it belonged, not on me, but on them. They called me wicked. But now the community knew the truth. I walked away that day with my head high, my heart steady. The boy they abandoned was gone. In his place stood a man who had built himself from the ground up. A man who needed no one's approval. A man whose success was the sharpest blade of revenge. And as I tell you this story today, I want you to remember, sometimes revenge isn't about violence. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge is success so undeniable, it forces the very people who doubted you to bow their heads in shame. That is how I became the man they could never break. That is how I turned wicked into powerful. And that is my reckoning. Now you've heard my story, the betrayal, the humiliation, the rise, and the reckoning. But tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you have forgiven them completely, or would you have done exactly what I did? I want to hear your thoughts, drop them in the comments below. And if this story shook you, if it made you feel the fire of survival and the sweetness of revenge, then don't just leave quietly. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Your support keeps me going and brings you more stories filled with suspense, pain, and triumph. Until next time, stay strong, and remember, success is the sharpest form of revenge.